Welcome back to PyCon US 2024. Waiting for my slides. I hope you all have a great conference so far. All right, let's see how this works. It's not showing the right thing on my display here. Sorry. Another blooper. All right. 2.1. Or is it 3? I lost count. so many bug fixes, which is okay. This is why we're doing it. Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm Canadian. Okay. Thank you. Okay. All right. Yes. Again, my name is Marietta. I'm the conference chair. And if you would like to follow along the slides, if there are like maybe information you would like to record, you can scan this barcode. It will take you to these slides. So if there are some information you have. So again, just want to thank all of you for being here. And I heard we broke another record last night at PyLadies auction, so thank you so much for all your support. And yeah, it's time for celebrations. And let me see here if I got it right. So if you were all here on Monday for Jay's keynote, last night I asked him, like, how's it going with the donation drive for Black Python devs? And out of the goal of 5,500, you all raised $11,000. So thank you so much for your support. And if you haven't done, if you were thinking about it, you haven't got the chance to do so, scan that barcode under the support sign there. And inspired by Jay's story, I have my own personal record that if you allow me to share. I've been inspired. Oh, my photo is not showing up, but great thing is I have it described. There you go. This is my personal record. I've been in tech for 20 years or so. Almost never have another Indonesian coworker. It took maybe 20 years. Like 2 years ago, I worked at some large corporation. That's the only time I actually met in person another Python developer from Indonesia. And we met under unfortunate circumstances. It was like the company just had a massive layoffs, and the rest of us who were still around, we decided maybe we should meet up while we could. And I've also been to a lot of Python conferences. I know some of you know, some of you have seen me in person as far as Brazil, Australia, Europe. The most another Indonesian person I get to speak my native language to is last year at PyCon US 2023, so it took that long. And the average is most one, but this year at PyCon US 2024, I actually get to speak my native language to at least 5 other people. So it's 250% more than usual. So that's a personal record that I'm definitely celebrating. And now I would like to describe the photo that's being shown here. The photo is taken by Iqbal Abdullah. Thank you so much. The description is there are 3 people standing on PyCon US main stage here, holding the large national flag of Indonesia. It's red and white stripes. red and white. From left to right, it's Lutfi Zukri, Marietta, and Dima M. Dinama. That's us. And this is meaningful to me because I saw, throughout this conference, I saw people sharing photos of their community, of the Black Python community, of the Charlas community. So this is my community too. Yeah. All right, I guess now it's time for PyCon US release notes. And I actually have the barcodes of, in case you missed the release notes from 2024.0.1.1, they are actually shown there. Maybe it will show up. It's okay, you can ask me if you need it. Now it's time for PyCon US 2024.2, the release notes for PyCon US 2024.2. So the swag pickup, they are, if you order t-shirt, you haven't picked them up yet, they are still here today until 11 a.m. And any leftover t-shirts that were not picked up will be for sale. So if you saw other people, if you didn't order and you would like the t-shirt, if you saw other people wearing them and you want one, you can buy them today between 11 to 1. Again, we still have the free sticker sheets, coloring book. What else? The expo hall, you might notice that it looks different. So today what we have there are the posters and job fair. And I would like to say something about the posters. If you were here last year, you might remember there are something happened to the posters. And I realized we never actually explained what happened. I think maybe you've heard rumors. What happened last year was that during the switch from the expo hall to the poster session, there was a mistake that the venue staff destroyed the posters, and so therefore the poster presenters were not able to present theirs. And I know some of you might have heard that we tried really hard last minute trying to find ways to print the posters. So to make it right, we actually invited all of the poster presenters from last year to here, to this year. So please go check them out. And we do have the job fair there too. I believe I mentioned that, but go to the expo hall. All right, let's see. Yes, so what's next? We will have the development sprint starting tomorrow until Thursday. They are happening in a venue, and there are no signed rooms, like you can use any available rooms for your sprints. We will have lunch served in Ballroom B and C. What it is that you get to contribute to open source projects. Many of the open source maintainers are there too to help you get started. And we have the space infrastructure, we have the Wi-Fi. I was told we are working to improve the Wi-Fi situation. And all you need to do is bring your own skills, your humanity, and your brain power, and your laptop. So there. And if you've never been to any kind of sprints before, you don't know what it's about, we actually have Intro to Sprints workshop today in room 402 that is led by Chalmer Rowe. So thank you. Thank you, Chalmer. I also would like to provide more documentation about the online experience. I was talking to some people yesterday and they didn't realize some of the important features of online experience. Basically, you can already rewatch any of the talks here that you missed. You don't have to wait like 2 weeks before it published to YouTube. You can rewatch them, so in case you feel unwell or you're just tired, you just wanna rest on your bed and watch, but you don't wanna miss out on the talks, You can watch them on the online experience, and I know there are people who are only attending online, so it's a good way for you to get to know them as well. And usually, the recordings are not published right away. It takes about 2 hours after the session starts, but still better than waiting 2 weeks. So you can join that through your PyCon US dashboard. You will see a big button saying join the online experience. All right, I forgot to check whether they still have rewards yet. Did anybody, more people get more 20 points? You want to clap? Yeah? Wow, great. Okay, go check. I know I forgot something. I wanted to check if they still have rewards, but you can go ahead and check for me. Go claim your reward. My son got one, so I haven't checked it, so go. All right. As a reminder, we do have a code of conduct, and you can read in details in pycon.us/conduct. If you have any concerns, please write to pycon-us-report@python.org. And if you need to find a code of conduct responders, they are wearing yellow lanyard, and there is also information about it on the back of your badge. All right, time for our keynote speaker. Today, right now, we have Kate Chapman, and a personal connection with me. Kate used to work in Indonesia, in Jakarta, for 4 years, and she has done a lot of work growing the Wikimedia community. And now she will talk to us about equitable opportunities in tech. So please welcome Kate Chapman.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mariata. One of the things that I thought was interesting about your comments about meeting other Indonesians here is I've actually only been to Python meetups in Indonesia. I've never been to one in the United States, where I'm from. So first, I'm just going to introduce a little bit more about myself. So I am a technologist, a geographer, and also a goat farmer. And when I was asked to keynote, I of course said yes, but then what did I actually want to talk about? What was the theme? Because I do a lot of open things, I do a lot of crowdsourcing, but what did I actually want the overall message to be? One of the ironic things about these pictures is I used to say I was a geographer first, and I actually couldn't find any pictures of me and maps together, so I might need to work on that a bit later. So the thing that's most interesting to me, that brings me to technology, that brings me to the work I do, is the way that we come together and collaborate. I think the hackathons coming up are a perfect example about that. You know, how do people and technology work together? That's really what I'm talking about. I talk about socio-technical systems, the interaction between technology and people. Often for me, it's crowdsourcing. Sometimes it's contributing to open source projects. It doesn't always have to be one or the other, how those two things work together. The other thing I find fascinating is when they work against each other or in unexpected ways. Often it's those surprises that cause us to innovate and do new things. So, when we're talking about socio and technical, socio being the humans, when is it just people being people? What I mean by that is sometimes you might see an online conversation and think, I could see that same interaction at a school board meeting, with my cashier at the grocery store, hanging out with my friends. But there's other times where maybe something is special about that. So, those are the things that are really important to me. The dynamics of the systems we build and how it influences how we interact with each other. How are these structures and flows reacted to work for, against, or maybe they're even neutral? One of my favorite, but old at this point, examples of working in unexpected ways was the Wikimedia Foundation and Facebook had offered free access to their platforms in Angola. Presumably, the Wikimedia Foundation was trying to provide access to free knowledge. Facebook, I can't speak to their motivations, but you can guess. And my favorite thing about this is what people actually did with this access. You see, internet access was expensive. So they began to hide pirated content on Wikipedia and then share the location of it on Facebook, which I think was shocking to anyone who originally set this up. But here's the thing. People mostly want to be entertained, at least I think, online, and we also learn. So not if you reflect on it, you're like, well, maybe not so surprising. One of my moments of feeling pretty silly was I was in a very rural part of Telangana in India, a 200-person village, and we were asking people about their mobile phone usage, and this one person just looked at me like, duh, I search for things and I watch videos. So, think about what are people's main motivations? So, and a little bit about what happens when I talk about my work. Often, people ask, don't we already do this? Hasn't that problem been completely solved? I'm going to take out my phone and, here, look, I can do it. Or just simply, you do what? And speaking to other technologists, you probably get the you do what often enough as it is. The other piece is I live in a quite rural part of the United States, so often the response is just, it must be really great to work from home. So, in speaking to all those questions, it's really we don't have equitable opportunities. Thinking back to the example in Angola, people were just looking for internet access to be able to be entertained and share information. And this is where I really focus on making progress. I really believe in the importance of digital commons to change lives, and how do we build those together through collaboration. Here's the thing, going back to, hasn't this already been solved? No, because these problems are complex. They require a system thinking approach, and we have to work on them together. What are powering these commons? People collaborating with technology. And the whole thing is, most things aren't solved for all, or not solved at all. Or maybe they're solved, but not in a satisfying way. So, what does it really mean for something to be solved? It's that no one has friction, whatever their needs are. So really, if you think about it, most things aren't that way. So for example, I've spent most of my time with the OpenStreetMap community, which comes from the idea that everyone should be able to map and use maps. And there aren't maps all over the world of every spot. I spent some time mapping in land rights. Do we know everything that's owned and who it belongs to? We also don't know that. And also, as legal systems change, people who may not have had access develop the ability to own land, and then it's a new problem to document those cases. I spent some time at the Wikimedia Foundation. You can't look everything up. All the knowledge in the world is not freely available. And then I'll talk a bit about my work today, which is I work in making supply chains transparent. The largest companies in the world don't know where the things that they're made that they sell come from. And just a little, I did mention I'm a goat farmer. There's this kind of small esoteric leg problem, the breed of goats that I have. We don't know why it happens. We crowdfunded research, but will we actually figure it out? It's probably not the most important problem in the backlog. but I hope we make progress. So one of the things I think is the more technology advances, the more people think we already solved it, whatever it is. So have we? Or like today, AI is doing amazing things, but you need base-level knowledge, base-level information. You can't just sprinkle artificial intelligence to get to the answer. I think with any new technology, this surface-level understanding, we want to figure out how we apply it to our lives. Can it actually solve that issue? The other thing I've seen is let's skip to the end of the problem space. So I was mentioning documenting who owns what land. I was the chief technology officer of the Cadasta Foundation. We're helping people with informal rights to their land document it. The number one question I got from partners was, how are you using blockchain to solve this problem? And this was in the middle of what I think was peak blockchain, I'm not sure. And really what the issue was, is the hope was you could skip going house by house, collecting all this data by somehow magically having a distributed ledger. And once people understood, no, you still have to do the hard work, well, they were disappointed, honestly. As part of this talk, this is my local county parcel lookup. So we do know who owns everything, at least under our formal legal system where I live. And I just wanted to flash it up because it's also that idea of fit for use. I was amused to see that the county says you should only use this platform for taxation. I use it to see who moved in down the street, but that's just me. So what will it take to declare things solved? I want to work on these base level issues, something that we generally used to call open data or a digital commons. The cool phrase right now is digital public infrastructure, but what are the things, how do we build things together that are accessible for all? I do think we will all manage to come up with more complex problems as well, but let's make some progress. So I'm going to go through a series of stories and what the key ingredients were that allowed this to happen in these digital commons. This is a map of a neighborhood I lived in Sterling, Virginia, quite some time ago at this point, but I started mapping an OpenStreetMap for one specific reason. The neighborhood next door annoyed me. So here's the thing. We had the exact same playground equipment, the exact same trails. My neighborhood, anyone was free to walk on the trails, to use the playgrounds. The neighborhood next door had put up cameras and signs that said residents only. So, as you can tell, I don't just believe in the digital commons. I believe strongly in a commons in general. So I started doing what a friend and I fondly call spite mapping. I started trespassing to map the neighborhood next door. And the reason I believe we're well beyond the statute of limitations on this, but we'll see. So anyway, I just wanted to show we had the same resources. On a map, it looked exactly the same. And the key pieces were, there was a place I was very passionate about. There was structure. OpenStreetMap was available. And I had a strong, strong motivation to actually do this. And here's the thing. At the time, I understood that OpenStreetMap was a free map of the entire world that anyone could contribute to. But I wasn't collaborating deeply. Like, do you have to know you're collaborating to collaborate? Or is it just enough to be like, OK, I'm mapping the neighborhood? And I think it depends. So I was still doing a bit of spite mapping, but I had gotten into the OpenStreetMap community. We had mapped the National Zoo in Washington, D.C. We had been doing local mapping meetups. I attended State of the Map, OpenStreetMap's PyCon, and hung out on IRC, all those sorts of things. And then in 2010, a terrible earthquake hit Haiti. The bright spot in this was people started mapping from all over the world. Someone in Japan and someone in Germany started mapping at virtually the same time without speaking to each other at all. The idea was, we don't know if it will be helpful, but we have to try. And so more and more people came together and kept working. And then, and the reason I got involved is I actually worked for a proprietary data subscription service during Hurricane Katrina. And we charged so much data. I don't know if Amex Black Cards are still a thing, but anyway, the supposedly limitless American Express card got shut off because of all the data we charged, and then we sold it to the US government. This was supposed to help people. And I just felt there had to be a different way. So when I saw this earthquake happening in Haiti, I thought, how can I help? And more people kept coming, but here was the real motivator. This very blurry picture showed up on the OpenStreetMap wiki, just like this. And it was one of the search and rescue teams saying, what you're doing is great. We're using it to find people. And more humanitarians were using it as well, but just someone who directly spoke to the community, and we kept going. And then the question was, could we go to Haiti? Could we help more people use the data? What about the people who are from Haiti and live there? How would we help them? And this is when the humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, which is the humanitarian arm of OpenStreetMap, really came into existence. And so the key things here, in my opinion, as far as why this was successful, was, I put it in the middle, but really motivation. You can imagine thinking, oh, maybe we're helping, and then someone says, yes, you're helping, what that motivation looks like. And timing, that people started actually mapping when it was needed. And then an important concept in my mind of these systems is emergence. You know, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and the system can change. There were tags in OpenStreetMap that were needed to be able to map in a disaster area. The community was able to grow and change. So then, here was the question. What if we had mapped ahead of time? Would have been a lot easier, huh? So that led me and a colleague, Jeff Hack, to go to Indonesia. And what started as just teaching some OpenStreetMap for a week in Jakarta turned into what it looked like to build an OpenStreetMap community there. So here I'll touch on a bit of how Python gets involved. So there's desktop geographic information systems software called QGIS. It's used to do geospatial analysis. And a plugin had been built on it called InnoSafe. The idea was to take scientific models and combine it with other information to help disaster managers make decisions. So you could take something very complex and make it simple. But there was no base level information. There were no roads. There were no buildings. There just wasn't detailed, up-to-date information. So that was where we came in. And we started mapping, and we started teaching OpenStreetMap. One of the big areas of the work wasn't even so much focused on editing data. It was more, how could we structure a community to make it more manageable? You see, an official civil engineering survey to determine if a building's going to fall down in an earthquake is almost 200 attributes you have to collect. So you can imagine if you wanted to map an entire city, you probably wouldn't get around to it. So we worked to negotiate, could we just collect 4 things and determine, like in this analysis, generally what would happen. We got down to 5, which I thought was pretty good from 100 and some odd. And then we were able to print reports out of InnoSafe to say, okay, if this type of disaster happens here, you need this many tents, this many bags of rice, this is what you need to get prepared. And so then we had another opportunity. So when I first went to Indonesia, we said we were never going to work on flooding. It was just, this was not my decision. I worked with both the Indonesian and Australian government, and they felt like, let's start with tsunamis and earthquakes and volcanoes because we just need to manage the scope. But we had luck in timing. So when Jakarta used to flood, the vice governor would go on his YouTube channel, and he had a list of all the neighborhoods, and they were just numeric, and say, these 10 neighborhoods are flooded, but you would have no idea of the spatial extent. There was no map. The thing was, at the neighborhood level, people knew the actual boundaries of the neighborhood. There was a government official for each neighborhood, but no one knew all 500 of them. Not sure exactly how they got assigned, but this data existed. So we were able to bring everyone together and map all of those neighborhoods, so the next time, you could actually provide a map. I'm adding another ingredient in this particular situation that I think it happens online some, but in person, I think it can make all the difference as well. The disaster manager we were working with for the province was really charismatic. So he was able to get 500 government officials show up in a series of 5 workshops and work with University of Indonesia students to actually map out the boundaries. And I highlight that because one of those ingredients for collaboration is people actually wanting to collaborate. They were mostly motivated by this individual. And then the luck and timing of flooding had always been an issue, but had gotten further attention. And now this ethos of collaboration, motivation, timing is crucial to the work the humanitarian OpenStreetMap team does. So I'm going to talk about, so OpenStreetMap has a long history as a project. I'm going to talk about something that happened once and went away, which is another thing that can happen with collaboration. So in the United States, there's a group called the Civil Air Patrol. They're volunteer pilots. And one of the things they at least used to do is, after this disaster, fly and take pictures of all the areas. That information would go on a DVD to the situation commander, and I don't think they ever looked at it, because what are you going to do with thousands of pictures when you're in the middle of a disaster? And I was fortunate to be part of a group where we would get together at Camp Roberts in California and figure out what sort of equipment, what sort of technology could we build to help with disasters. And we had built this fork of MapMel. And it was really just a 3-day prototype. And so the thing about this prototype, and the reason I think we were successful, is it was the classic, should we fork something, or should we start from the beginning? And fortunately, the group of engineers I was a part of, we had previously tried to build something for a disaster and built it from scratch, and it never was launched. So we had had this argument together before. We had trust and familiarity with each other. So then when Superstorm Sandy hit, the Civil Air Patrol flew. Someone said, hey, can you stand up this MapMel thing that you put together in a few days? And we were able to. And so then over 6,000 people were able to look at all these images and say, this area is okay, this has some damage, and this is really bad. The impact of this is it allowed crews to go do assessments in a much faster way. And so, that collaboration of us as software engineers with these pilots and building trust, and then having a system in place, and then we were able to ask a crowd who really just wanted to help, and then it actually led to response on the ground. Once again, timing was everything. And maybe for me, a lot of it really is timing, because I tend to work in disasters and humanitarian response, where there's usually a moment and an urgent need. I'm going to shift a little bit away from, I'm going to shift completely, actually, away from disasters to talk about another moment of collaboration. So prior to my current role, I was at the Wikimedia Foundation as a director of engineering, managing a variety of engineering teams. And one of the things that I found was really fascinating was MediaWiki and how it really has allowed Wikipedia to grow. I would be really surprised if there was a person in this room who hasn't used MediaWiki as at least a user on some wiki somewhere, even if somehow you've never used Wikipedia. And the thing was, it doesn't try to structure everything. Crucial is that emergence. How does the system become greater than the sum of its parts? And there was a strong motivation to allow people to collaborate how they wished. And that's really led to fascinating community structures on top of this software that aren't documented in the software through the structures. And I'll say that I'm grossly oversimplifying this, so if you are a really long-term and very motivated Wikipedian, please be gentle. But I think the thing is, so often we're like, users. But if we can let people collaborate and we have some flexibility, things could be greater than we could ever imagine. So we've come to the current problem space I hinted at. We actually don't know where things come from. Supply chains are magic, or at least they are very hard to figure out. So imagine you're wearing a shirt. Let's say you bought it in a store. The store you bought it from probably knows who they bought the shirt from. What they don't know most of the time is where the buttons came from, where the cotton was grown, who weaved it, who dyed it. Because it's a complex web of these purchasing transactions between each other that it's really kind of amazing it works. And I realize, thinking about supply chains, people are more aware or since 2020 when really it became in the forefront in COVID. So the thing that happens with not knowing this is some of the most terrible things in the world happen. You don't know if child labor grew the cotton or modern-day slavery. There's still a lot of forced labor in the world. What deforestation happened, or what's the carbon emissions? And maybe your reaction is, I'll stop consuming, and it's not really practical. I mean, you can reduce your consumption, but you're still going to eat. You probably aren't growing all your own food. There's been different approaches to attempt to incentivize people to right these wrongs for a long time. When I was working in land rights, one of the examples was, could you pay people a little extra not to encroach on national forests? But the thing is, if you're basically subsistence farming, even if you get paid a little extra, or is your neighbor going to cheat? Can you make things just a little bit better? So this didn't really materialize. So we're in the early stages of collaboration at Open Supply Hub. We're a nonprofit. We're working to crowdsource supply chain information so that we can actually address these wrongs that happen in the world. So our goal is to map all of the supply chain production locations. This is anything from the farms to the warehouses to the factories to the mines. That's so we can have just the base level information about where things come from. A lot of times people's thoughts jump to, how do I take a picture of this in the store and know everything about where it came from? No, we're not even focused on tracing things. It's just, where are they? This data can be quite challenging, and we're doing a more formal type of crowdsourcing, I would say, right now, but I have goals that anyone in the world can be contributing to supply chain transparency. And what I mean by formal crowdsourcing is organizations like Target or Disney or Amazon upload that tier 1 supplier list, where did they get the shirt from, as well as the factories upload their data, and everyone in between, which could be a certification saying this is organic or some sort of audit. So you start to get a pulse of where are these things. And so part of the reason and urgency of this is there's a lot of legislation coming about that says, so for example, in Europe, you're going to have to start proving deforestation did not happen for the products you're importing. There was not forced labor. But we don't have good ways to answer that. So there was a New York Times article about, can Europe save forests without killing jobs in Malaysia? And this is sort of an example of where, how do we all work together to solve a problem? Because a quote in it was, farmers with fewer than 10 acres can just use a smartphone to map their land. GPS coordinates can be generated easily and for free. So what I think is going to happen, because if you just have a small plantation or a small holder farmer, they're just going to source from somewhere else, going back to how might this kill jobs. And we're talking about the most vulnerable people in the world. So, as a good dairy goat farmer, I'm going to talk about butter and where it comes from. My partner asked why I bought 3 brands of butter at the grocery store, and I said I was preparing for a keynote. So, in the US, we have a lot better data. It's a little bit hard to see, but the plant number is on the top butter, and you can enter that, and you can figure out what plant it's from. We have open data around that. But which dairy farm it came from, we don't know that. We know who maybe sources from Tillamook or Dairygold. I also found out in this little experiment, we'll call it some low-level butter controversy. So I live in the Pacific Northwest. Tillamook is a beloved brand there. It's a thing to go visit the factory. They have a visitor center. So I looked up the plant number on that butter. They don't make their own butter. Who knew? But imagine if, rather than scraping PDFs, you could actually look these things up. So related to this, the next piece is a lot of data does exist, but we don't have a good way of exchanging it. So one of the things that we're doing is we're just building an exchange standard for exchanging this supply chain data, because there's a lot of data out there, but it's just easier to connect systems. And I will confess that I have a love-hate relationship with standards. I understand why we need them, but sometimes they just get overly complex and it can be hard to utilize. So we're just trying to say, how do we exchange data about this is where this is made, this is who owns it, and maybe a few other details about it. And so back to the butter and my love-hate relationship with standards. This is Butterfoot. Butterfoot is a 3D printed butter cap that my partner designed because we like to leave the butter on the counter and then the cat licks it. So I said, could you make the butter a cowboy hat? But there was already a very similar design for a Godzilla foot available. So imagine you're trying to exchange supply chain data. There's 2 standards for butter in the US. So Butterfoot's going to need an adapter. That's the sort of thing that we're building, is an adapter to connect this data together. So there was one piece that I was struggling for a specific example that was really in the forefront of my mind around this from the technologist digital commons perspective. But a couple weeks ago, this hit really strongly when I was thinking about it. The other key component with these things, when we say emergent or flexible or the timing, is the cultures need to be additive as well. And what's the right balance of that? Like, we want to be inclusive, but, and it's hard to say but about it, but it's more about, there's some community norms, and you're welcome to join us within those norms. And the reason this was on my mind, I'm going to go back to the goat situation for a moment, is back to that goat leg problem. I run a 1,200-person Facebook group. I'm a little embarrassed about the Facebook part of it, specifically related to this leg problem. Goat people are on Facebook. So anyway, we have a few rules. Our one community rule that probably won't make sense to this group is you can't actually list the goats that have this problem. And the reason is people get in flame wars about goats. And so recently, it happened for the 3rd or 4th time, where someone came in and they said, we hate this rule that you can't name goats. The thing about culture being additive, we could decide, okay, maybe we're going to throw that rule out the window. We did not. Or, you're welcome to fork and create your other community. And I think one of those ingredients is what keeps us together, but when is it okay to go a little bit separate ways or, have your separate little sections. This flexibility can be key for community growth, but until you've experienced a goat forum flame war, you might not understand this situation. Anyway, so those key ingredients that I was talking about that I think are important, and I don't claim these are all the ingredients. These are just the ones that I tend to notice And humans are quite complex. The first, I think emergence, how we've managed to grow and be greater than the sum of our parts, is a crucial part of communities. This additive culture, what's the right amount of, you come in and things change a little bit. Motivation, be it sticking it to the neighbors or trying to save lives and everything in between, are key for communities. Sometimes a little charisma doesn't hurt as well. What's the right level of trust? And then finally, luck and timing. With so many things, it's just there's a great need, or technology is at the point where it can be helpful. That's the luck and timing. Anyway, I hope this was useful. I was told, or I've watched a few PyCon US keynotes to get an idea on things that you're supposed to say something really controversial. If I have, let me know so that I can, go forward with that. But thanks for spending the time listening to me today, and I'll be around the rest of the day if you want to talk about any of these subjects. Thank you very much.